Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Here's a quote for you: a shameless violation that should make your blood run cold. That's how President Biden described Russia's war on Ukraine in his remarks to the United Nations General Assembly. He also urged the world to stay united in defense of Ukraine.
The president didn't stop at calling out Russia. He also addressed tensions with China and sent a message of encouragement to Iranians protesting their government. George Thomas has more.
President Biden used his position on the world stage to remind members of the UN's General Assembly that Russia's invasion of Ukraine 211 days ago was a clear violation of the global order.
This war is about extinguishing Ukraine's right to exist as a state, plain and simple, and Ukraine's right to exist as a people. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whatever you believe, that should make your blood run cold.
Russia's president escalating the crisis, calling up 300,000 reservists to fight after Ukraine makes dramatic gains on the battlefield. Putin saying he won't hesitate to even use nuclear weapons to stop Ukraine's counteroffensive.
I want to remind you that our country has various means of destruction to protect Russia and our people. We will certainly use all means at our disposal. This is not a bluff.
Ukraine's president, addressing the UN meeting via video, urged the world body to punish Moscow for its invasion and called for a special tribunal to try Russia for war crimes.
And Ukraine demands punishment for trying to steal our territory, punishment for the murders of thousands of people, punishment for tortures and humiliations of women and men.
While Russia loomed large during Biden's address, the president also used the UN platform to address America's biggest rival.
Let me be direct about the competition between the United States and China. As we manage shifting geopolitical trends, the United States will conduct itself as a reasonable leader. We do not seek conflict. We do not seek a Cold War.
Biden condemning the ongoing human rights violations in China and around the world, including in Iran, where clashes between police and protesters have erupted nationwide following the death of a young woman, Mahsa Amini, who died for violating Iran's strict Islamic dress code.
Today, we stand with the brave citizens and the brave women of Iran, who right now are demonstrating to secure their basic rights.
Meanwhile, Iran's president also spoke at the UN, calling Israel a savage power. And he held up a picture of Qasem Soleimani, a top Iranian general who was killed by a U.S. drone strike back in 2010, promising to avenge his death. Gordon?
Well, George, let's talk about the protests in Iran. They have to do with Mahsa Amini. We can get a picture of her. I want to show everyone what she looked like. Here she is, a 22-year-old girl, prime of life. She's coming in from Kurdistan, Kurdish part of Iran, visiting her relatives, traveling with her brother. She gets off, I believe, a bus station or train station, and is then arrested by the moral police for how she's wearing her hijab. She's got it on. She's trying to wear it. She's just, according to them, not wearing it properly. And within 2 hours, they have beaten her so severely. Here's the scan that was leaked. Hackers got into the hospital scans. They found a scan of her brain. And there you see the extensive damage caused, that she was beaten so severely and so many times that it caused her death. And then here's the unbelievable lie coming from the government that she had some kind of sudden heart attack in the police station. and they don't know why she collapsed. It had to do with some kind of medical condition. Well, the medical condition was they beat her to death. So now we're seeing protests inside of Iran. Yeah. So how are these demonstrations now different from previous ones?
Yeah, I mean, it really just touches to the core of the entire nation, Gordon. I mean, just imagine you, as you mentioned, you come to another city, you come to visit your family and your loved ones, and just because you're not completely veiled, that your hair is not completely covered. I remember several years ago being on the streets of downtown Tehran, interviewing this very young lady, very beautiful young lady, and because her scarf was over the middle of her head and she was showing so much of her front, a man just came from right behind, during our interview, came from right behind us and just yanked the scarf right over her head and in Farsi said, "You should cover your entire head." And this young lady, 21, 22 years old, shouted back at this man and says, "Don't you dare touch my hair. I can do what I want to do." And years later, this continued agony, this continued frustration in the midst of all the economic challenges that Iran is facing, this young lady, 22 years old, Amina, loses her life over a scarf and the fact that her hair was not completely covered. And today you're seeing the results and you see the images. It's quite dramatic. I mean, I've never seen this kind of images of Iranian men and women going to police cars, burning down a police station today, attacking police officers, those on motorbikes, hitting them. You can just sense the frustration and the anger that is palpable on the streets of Iran today over a very simple thing that seems so innocuous, but yet it is at the core of their culture. And today Iranians are fighting back. Remember, it's the granddaughters of the grandsons who are fighting against their grandparents, the mullahs, those who ushered in the 1979 Islamic Revolution. And they're saying, my goodness, please, why are people dying? Why are people being arrested over such a simple thing that seems so archaic?
We've seen protests before. The Green Revolution was the most significant one. In that, the government unleashed their own military. They had snipers on the rooftops, and they started shooting people. Then they imposed an internet blackout throughout the country in order to stop organization. I'm hearing now that there's a power outage, that the government has shut off electricity. What's your prediction on this one? Do you think we'll see a change in the government, that finally the prayers of people around the world being answered, that this theocracy would be overthrown? Are we going to see that, or are we going to see more crackdown?
I got a message overnight from a source in Tehran, and this person said to me, "George, we are all alone, and we don't have weapons, we don't have guns, we have no way of fighting back. All we have is our heart and our hands." And the reality is that as you see these images of these brave young men and women attacking police officers, burning down government buildings, going after police officers, the crackdown is going to happen because it's inevitable. They've shut down the internet. WhatsApp is down. Instagram, which is very, very popular and has been allowed to thrive for quite some time, is off. They have no access to that. Twitter is also down. And so when you see these kinds of images, the response from the authoritarian regime, the leaders of the government, is to crack down and to crack down severely.
All right, well, let's turn to Russia. President Putin said that he's going to, I guess, conscript 300,000 more troops to fight in Ukraine. And then the reaction, every single plane has been booked fully. People are heading to the exits in droves, and they're also starting to protest. Are we going to see an eruption in Russia as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the video that was released by Flight Radar 24, look at that. Out of Moscow and St. Petersburg, within hours of Putin's decision to call up 300,000, look at all those planes getting out of the country. So many people leaving because they don't want to get conscripted, right? And so over the last 24 hours, about 38 cities across Russia saw demonstrations. Close to about 2,000 people have been arrested because they're protesting against the Kremlin's decision to call up people. This is reality. And so just imagine the extremes. On one hand, in the Middle East, in the heart of Iran, women and men demonstrating for freedom. And here you have on the streets of Moscow, St. Petersburg, other places of Russia, people are demonstrating against their government's decision to go up and to go to a war that they never agreed to, never signed up for.
All right. Well, George, thanks for the insight. Thanks for the report. And for you at home, join with us in prayer for both of these nations. These are people who are struggling to be free. And you look at the protests, you look at what's happening, and a leadership that doesn't even acknowledge they make mistakes, that the whole Ukrainian war is one colossal mistake. The religious theocracy that is exporting terrorism around the world, but particularly targeted to Israel. These things have to change and they have to stop. Let us petition Almighty God to move on their behalf, to hear their cries, to reach out, to redeem them and change these nations. God can do it, and let's ask him to do it, and let's ask believing. Well, in other news, New York's Attorney General is accusing former President Trump and 3 of his children of business fraud. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, Attorney General Letitia James's lawsuit comes after a years-long investigation into the financial practices of the Trump Organization.
The complaint demonstrates that Donald Trump falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system, thereby cheating all of us. He did this with the help of the other defendants, his children.
The suit seeks to recover more than $250 million the AG claimed was taken through alleged deceptive practices. While not a criminal prosecution, James is referring possible federal violations to the Justice Department and the IRS. Now to an update on the fight over the documents seized from the former president's Florida home. A federal appeals court ruled the Department of Justice can analyze classified documents seized in the raid. A judge had put a hold on using those documents in the investigation. The court ruled Trump's legal team gave no evidence he declassified the material. To the economy, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates another 3/4 of a point Wednesday, the latest move in the Fed's effort to bring down record-high inflation. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell admitted continuing to raise interest rates increases the possibility of a recession, with the hope of a soft landing for the economy looking more unlikely.
We have got to get inflation behind us. I wish there were a painless way to do that. There isn't.
Powell also signaled more rate hikes are likely. Looking down to our southern border now, staggering new numbers on illegal crossings are putting President Biden on the defense. As CBN's Tara Mergener reports, both parties are fighting over who's to blame and how to hold back the wave of illegal immigration.
The United States has never seen illegal border crossings reach this level. Republicans and now more members of the media are asking President Biden to explain what's behind this historic surge.
In what country in the world are you allowed to enter illegally into a country violating its laws and within a week be in court suing the very government whose laws you've just violated?
Senator Marco Rubio firing back at some of the 50 migrants who sued Florida Governor Ron DeSantis after he sent them from Texas to Martha's Vineyard.
They were provided an ability to be in the most posh sanctuary jurisdiction maybe in the world.
Rubio and other GOP critics claiming migrants take advantage of American taxpayers and the country's legal system.
Anyone who comes here illegally to come and to stay, and we should assume that responsibility, but only if they stay in Florida, but only if they stay in Texas, not if they come to New York, not if they come to Massachusetts.
The Biden administration has already transported hundreds of thousands of migrants to U.S. cities from coast to coast, many under the cover of darkness. Now a Texas sheriff is investigating DeSantis for sending the small group to the Massachusetts resort area.
Migrants were lured, I will use the word lured, under false pretenses into staying at a hotel for a couple of days. They were promised work, they were promised the solution to several of their problems, and then they were unceremoniously stranded in Martha's Vineyard.
As the border grows more overwhelmed by the day, Biden has struggled to explain the skyrocketing number of illegal crossings into border cities like El Paso, this week claiming more people are fleeing communist regimes.
On the border, why is the border more overwhelmed under your watch, Mr. President?
There's fewer immigrants coming from Central America and from Mexico. This is a totally different circumstance. What's on my watch now is Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua.
Here in D.C., the mayor's emergency declaration remains in effect due to the thousands of migrants sent here by Republican governors. The D.C. Council just approved $10 million to open a government office aimed at supporting the migrants. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
We turn now to the Atlantic, where Hurricane Fiona is a massive Category 4 storm as it heads north. Bermuda is under hurricane warnings as the storm is expected to pass just west of the island in the next 24 hours. The people of Puerto Rico are picking up after Fiona's fury. Operation Blessing is now on the scene, providing disaster relief to the hard-hit island. The storm hit there as a Category 1. Since then, 1.5 million Puerto Ricans have been without power. Operation Blessing is helping to distribute water filter kits and easily chargeable solar lamps. Terry?
Thanks, Ephraim.